So I'm here at the Citadel Park area in Lille. If you're ever in Lille, check out the Citadel Park. It's a beautiful afternoon in February, and I'm looking at this tree here, which is the European ash, Fraxinus excelsior is the scientific name. Fraxinus excelsior. Sounds very fancy. This one's got a very weird form with this like extra branch coming out of the main straight trunk that stretches the whole way over here. And that's what caught my eye originally. I have to say, so far, European ash might be my favorite. I don't like picking favorites. Well, I kind of actually do. Tree to identify and find around Lille, just because I just like the buds are so distinctive. They're just these big black buds that very early on when I first got here and there was less signs of how to identify trees, were very easy to be like, oh, there's a big black terminal bud with like this one giant one accompanied by two others. This is very likely a European ash. And now that it's getting into more spring, it's still February. Or no, it's March 2nd. I forgot. Now it's getting into more spring, even though it's technically still winter. They're starting to get these flowers. The very beginnings of, I think, what will become flowers. That you can see over there as well. That also very much can get your attention. Because it's an ash, it's going to have opposite branching. Here's the bark. I feel like this is an older ash, so maybe the bark is a little bit different. On the young ones, it's going to be more smooth, and then it becomes more coarse and vertically gets these vertical fissures when they're older, but I don't think the bark is extremely distinctive, to be honest with you. Instead, I find it more helpful to look at those terminal buds. European ash tend to prefer moist soils, which makes sense because I'm right next to water. I'm trying to think where I could find leaves, but because I'm just seeing a bunch of London plane tree leaves, I believe. But because it's March, unfortunately, I think the leaves are kind of gone. But they kind of are similar to maybe thinking of a walnut or like a tree of heaven. They're these pinnately compound leaves with all these leaflets coming off of one leaf. And then I believe they have one terminal leaf at the end, so it would normally be an odd number of leaves. So here I think I found a European ash that still has those samares on it, if you would call them that. And it doesn't have any flowering or anything, so I do wonder if is it dioecious, whereas male and female trees. Okay, so this next tree we're going to be looking at is not this one, but it's this one, which is, I believe, the European holly, or Ilex aquifolium. And there's a lot of little tiny European hollies that I'm seeing around. I say tiny, but in general, compared to other trees, European holly is quite small. I believe they're typically from like 7 to 10 feet tall, so they're quite small. They can get big, but they're very slow growing, so it's not as common to see a large one. But additionally, they are understory trees here in Europe, so they don't mind being in the shade. In fact, they're very shade tolerant, and in general they're very tolerant of many different conditions, even considered pioneer species because of this. and could potentially be invasive. In the US, the European holly is invasive in some places, but I don't believe Pennsylvania that they're invasive yet. But I feel like the European holly is pretty easy to ID because, well, A, it's evergreen, so I don't have to worry about like looking at, that's not the European holly, like buds or anything to try and decipher it in wintertime. I also just think that the leaves of really any holly are kind of very distinguishable because they are these like dark green, shiny, obviously these are wet, but they're shiny normally, kind of paler on the underside. And then typically a lot of times they're pointy and they have these like spines on them as well. They don't always have spines. I was looking that up, and apparently they can be just kind of rounded without spines especially if it's an older tree. But most of the time when I see them, they have, at least some leaves are spiny like these ones are. The female ones, because they are dioecious, so it's only the female ones will have the red berries that are very iconic for the European holly. I guess the last feature that's kind of helpful, but it's not super obvious, is just the bark. It's normally kind of just gray, smooth bark. I'm seeing a lot of like seemingly some sort of leaf mining activities. I did see online that there was like a very common leaf miner that you find with European holly. Maybe I'll add something about that in, if this is what this is, which is kind of interesting. It's kind of leaving these very like pretty markings on the leaves. But yeah, I haven't been able to find any berries. But yeah, that's the European holly. I think I see a springtail. These have got to be one of my favorite insects that I've learned about. You can't even really see it. It's right there. But you ever see one of these up close? They're so cute. And they're atero something, which means that they're insects, but they don't have any wings. Let me see if I can poke it and see if it does anything, because usually they spring away. It's not doing anything. Oh. This is like the least worried springtail of all time. I think I just realized there's like a whole family of them, but you can see them right there. There's one, there's two. There's another one right there. From this distance, they kind of look like spiders, but they're not. And if you couldn't tell by like the size of my finger, they're so small. I think these are the globular springtails, which, okay, my finger's just messing up, but I'm trying to see if it'll do the spring thing. Come on. I just saw one earlier do one, and these ones are like refusing to move. I don't know if it's because it's early in the morning. Okay, I'll leave them be. They don't want to show off. Incredible. I did it. Anyway, the whole reason I stopped here was because I was looking at this plant, which I'm very, very, very familiar with, even though it's not native to Pennsylvania. It is common privet, Ligustrum vulgare, which I'm very familiar with in the United States, especially in Pennsylvania, because it is very much an invasive species there. Here it's perfectly fine. It's native. There's also lots of privet. Like when I say privet in the United States, there's like a billion different types that are invasive. I can't tell the difference. There's like Chinese privet, there's border privet, there's common privet. I don't even know. I think European privet's the same thing. There's just so many insects on this tree. Sorry, I'm getting so distracted by things. But yes, I'm sure you are familiar with this tree, or this plant. The way I identify it is it's got this like pale gray bark. Look, there's another insect right there. Or beetle. I always say insect, but I'm never beetles are insects, right? Anyway, but yes, it's got like pale gray bark. It has opposite arrangement of leaves, so it's coming off opposite branching as well. And it also has these little berries, these black berries that are little small things, and the leaves are these ovate, but they're just green oval leaves. It's very small. Yeah, and don't eat those berries because they are poisonous to humans. And then the flowers are like these little white bunch things. But another thing to point out about the privet is it very commonly is in these like shoot sort of things where like even if you cut them back, they'll just come back. It's like a hydra. Like you cut off one head and then sprouts a billion more. It's impossible to control the privet if it is a problem, which it seems like they're trying to cut back on it, which like I said, it's a hydra. It doesn't look like it's been working out for them. Even where it's native, I guess people are cutting it down, so I feel kind of bad for it, but I do have a personal vendetta against privet. Not gonna lie. So this kind of makes me happy. Alright, that's gonna do it. Thanks for watching. See you next time.